Do you guys like Slay the Spire? Of course you do. What about inventory Tetris? Maybe a dash of D&D? If so, wee buddy, have we got ourselves yet another fantastic strategy roguelite for you. Jarek Defiler here to bestow upon thee the exceptionally enjoyable Lootbound. With a release date of August 14, 2026, this new turn-based strategy roguelite developed by ArtDock is definitely worth putting on your radar. ArtDock! Trounce through enemies using skills of your choosing from a pool of 4 characters. Build up your arsenal by picking various weapons and armor as you progress in each run. And, for a more unique take of this type of game, build a party as you move on through each level. Super fun! If you're like me and are a fan of turn-based strategy roguelites that provide new innovation to the genre, then you'll no doubt get some pleasure from this one. So join me as we take a nice deep look into the awesomeness that is Lootbound. Breakdown. Hello, you and you and you, fellow gaming brothers and sisters from across the globe. I'm here with a rather unique experience for you guys. Lootbound. Perhaps you may have noticed some of their ads on X. For me, I was given a Steam key of the full release from ArtDock, and I am forever thankful because I had a blast with this one, despite some criticisms that we'll get into later. But before all that, if you enjoyed the video, why don't you do me a favor and subscribe to my humble little channel? Maybe toss in a like in that there tubes of you, or rumble depending on where you're watching, and share with your fellow gaming friends and family. Spreading around videos is a great way to get us little content creators some traction, so yeah, much obliged. Now, as I mentioned before, Lootbound is indeed a turn-based strategy roguelite. The gameplay loop is similar to that of Slay the Spire, but that isn't a one-by-one comparison. Lootbound isn't a deck builder, and it has a variety of innovative mechanics that I haven't seen put into this type of genre before. It's almost like its own roguelike genre in a way. As such, it really impressed me in that regard. You'd think that this type of game, that being turn-based roguelites, would be somewhat exhaustive and done to death by this point, but hell no, the indie scene and just smaller studios have been absolutely killing it in this genre, and I can't help but sing their praises. If you're familiar with my channel, you know I love the roguelite genre. I'm a working dad, working husband. I just don't have the time to play particularly long-form games on average, especially when in my spare time for fun when I'm not covering a game for my channel. For me, the roguelite genre is awesome. You can do a run or two, unlock some meta progression, and then put it away for a few days with no consequences. There's no need to log on every day to do daily quests. You don't have to play regularly in order to not get left behind in some meta. You play at your own pace and with no worries. I love it. Breakdown. ArtDock. So I'm always willing to try out new takes on the genre, and Lootbound is a prime example of how they took a tried and true formula and just built on it. Now, the similarities to Slay the Spire are apparent, so I'll be using that as a main comparison here. For one, the art style seems very much inspired by Slay the Spire. It's pretty good. You also have a very similar run map that is straight up like Slay the Spire's, and the overall gameplay loop is reminiscent of it as well. You know, start a run, defeat enemies, unlock items that increase your strength, fight elite mobs, make your way to the boss, defeat said boss, rinse and repeat. However, there are more differences than similarities to Slay the Spire here. For one, there's no store or random event rooms on your run. Instead, you have a chest, blacksmith, and trading rooms. Each of these will offer different upgrades for your party. Trading rooms grant a stat increase to your player character, blacksmiths grant stat gems that you can put into any items on any character, and chests grant an option of one of 3 items that may or may not have character requirements. I'll go over that a bit more in depth later. Now, when I say grant the option or offer different upgrades, I mean it grants the possibility. For every one of these rooms are under the caveat that you have to roll d20 dice and win the roll in order to be granted that option. So the better the option, the higher the dice check. Some of these can get up to requiring a roll of 18, while the weakest will be like 3. If you fail a roll, you are also granted a limited amount of rerolls per run, so you can decide if you want to try again in case it's an item or stat you really want. Personally, I fucking hate this. Dice rolls in this type of genre is something that I just can't stand, but more on that later in the criticism section. Okay! Another innovative mechanic Lootbound has is the implementation of a party system during each run. Each run has 3 levels with a final boss at the end. During the first and second level, the player is granted an option of one of 2 new companions to fight with. These will be the same playable characters you can choose from at the start of each run. You have the warrior, the witch, the bard, and the paladin. Along with the dice rolls, this is where you're seeing the influence of D&D. Pretty sweet. ArtDock. The warrior is based on tanking and thorns, dealing damage when attacked. His main damage type is slash, which does extra damage to HP and enemy's health. The witch is a heavy-hitting debuffer. She mainly uses acid damage, an attack that bypasses armor, and chaos, a stat that increases the power of her debuffs. The bard is mostly a support class, using an arsenal of healing, fury, which is a damage buff, and speed buffs. They're at their strongest when buffing up other characters in the party. Still, they are capable of some fairly gnarly damage themselves, mainly acid, as they can also buff themselves. Lastly, the Paladin is another tank who also supports with heals and armor buffs. He mainly uses crushing damage, which does double damage to armor. Now, do note that no character is limited to any type of damage and whatnot. It all depends on how you build them. The witch can do slash damage if you want, the paladin can do acid, but it most likely wouldn't be optimal as many of the best items are character specific. So when you're progressing through a run, it's important to build a nice party depending on what character you're using. You get a total of 3 in your party, so you can't use everyone. That said, pretty much any combination can work as far as I've seen, so long as you have a decent build for them. And class balance is pretty great for the most part. The Bard is probably the only character that I struggled to win any runs with at first, often finding myself dying within the first 3 fights, but once you start upgrading them, they can become very powerful within the party given the strength of their buffs. It's all a learning experience. One thing I will say, however, is that every class is just super fun to play. I love them all. This is a breakaway from Slay the Spire for me, as I never really enjoyed playing the Ironclad or the Watcher there. The Defect was always my favorite. And in Lootbound, the Witch is definitely my favorite, but I enjoyed playing them all, and I continue to experiment with them even after I'm maxing out their stats in the barracks. Really good character designs here that make each one unique, but still a blast to play all around. Great job here, ArtDock! Now, what really sets Lootbound apart from the other titles in this genre is the inventory system. Given this isn't a deck builder, your power will come from stats and items. You'll get plate armor, necklaces that provide auras, helms and hats, jackets, mantles, hoods, swords, instruments, hammers, and staffs. All manner of different items, including a separate inventory for items like bombs, potions, and mushroom buffs to help you get out of a pinch. The main items have their own tiers as well. You have common, rare, legendary, and divine. Legendary and divine items always come with what's called auras. Auras will provide buffs to the given item noted on said aura, but with the caveat that the item will generally have to be placed in a specific way and location in your inventory, with the exception of necklaces that provide no stats outside of auras. This is really interesting as it forces the player to use their thinker nut and master their inventory Tetris skills in order to get maximum benefits from their items. However, I think there are some issues here that can cause it to be frustrating at times, but we'll go over that in the criticism section. So as you progress in a run, you'll be given various items as rewards for events or winning fights, and you'll then use those to equip all your party members and make a build based off those items. Now, I'm not sure that they're the first ones to do it, but this is super unique and super fun, and I just love that they thought of this for this type of genre. I hope to see more of this in other roguelites as well, as I think it's fantastic. You can really shape each character differently each run based on what items you decide to give them. For instance, the Witch is mostly a high damage, low defense type character, but I have done builds where I basically made her a dodge tank. I had her dodge up to like 70% or something with a moderate amount of health and still high damage, so she would tend to be targeted a lot, but mostly she would just dodge the attacks. But when she did get hit, I still had a decent amount into her vampirism stat, which is a lifesteal, so she could just regain that health back over the course of the fight or get healed by the Bard or Paladin. It was really fun and one of my favorite builds to date, and it just happened organically. I never set out to do that. I was just getting a lot of items that allowed it, and then eventually I realized what I could do with it and just leaned into it. That's the sexy power of ArtDock. Lootbound. You tend to stumble into builds you otherwise never would have thought of trying, at least if you have a pea-brain like yours truly. But when it comes to the fights, the combat is kind of basic, but still fun to me. The enemies tend to use the same attacks over and over outside of elites and bosses, but I enjoyed it regardless and never got bored of it. But it's not something super special here, let's be honest. That said, with bosses, you actually build the boss as you progress on the run. At the end of each level, you are granted one of 2 options to assign to the end boss. This will be things like choosing between it having more critical power or health and armor, or the boss focusing on your high attack power characters versus high defense characters when attacking. Things like that. It's a pretty interesting mechanic and allows for you to properly prepare for the final fight. More innovation from ArtDock. There is a pretty good amount of enemy diversity here as well. I really enjoyed their enemy types as they are all unique and have their own strengths and weaknesses that make every run different. Some enemies will buff themselves or their allies, and depending on the buffs, you may want to target them first or leave them for last. Sometimes there will be heavy hitters that you want to take out as quickly as possible, or just ignore if you're doing a Thorns build and let them kill themselves. Each enemy will have different attack targets as well, with some focusing on your high attack power characters, others your high defense characters, or some that just attack at random. So depending on your party layout and build, each fight has you adapting and coming at it in a different way. This is where the strategy angle comes in, along with your builds. This also makes each run fun and unique rather than getting stale after a while. ArtDock did a fantastic job in the overall gameplay loop to the point that I just never got bored with it despite having clocked 189 hours on Steam. Granted, a lot of those hours was just me leaving the game running while I do errands and make dinner for the wife and goober and whatnot. But still, I just want to keep playing more, especially when typing up this script and thinking of different builds I want to do. So yes, like any good roguelite, replayability abound in that which is Lootbound. Okay, one last topic before we delve into my criticisms, that of the meta progression. There is a plethora of unlocks to do in the meta progression, and it's done very, very well, I feel. I still have yet to unlock everything because I tend to focus on the most expensive unlocks first, so it kinda slows things down in the long run, but I maxed out the warrior and the witch and am currently working on the bard. I also unlocked some of the best dye and a pricey potion. Oddly enough, I have yet to unlock any actual items in the arsenal, so I'm just doing each run with the basic items. But yeah, let me go over all this quickly. ArtDock. For starters, all unlocks are made using memory shards, kind of the game's currency, all of which you are granted during each run by defeating enemies and the final boss, but also by discarding unwanted items during your run. In the main hub, you will unlock all the different buildings to gain access to various upgrades and archives. At the beginning, you have the barracks, which allows you to beef up the stats of all your characters. Then you have the game room, which houses all the different dye you can unlock. Be sure to read through these rather carefully as they are somewhat complex and each has its own strengths and weaknesses. Reading in Lootbound is very important overall actually, so don't be a moron like me and just rush through everything as you will find some pain in that procedure. Next up, you have the laboratory, which allows you to unlock new powerful potions, mushrooms, bombs, and powders. After that is the arsenal, which contains all the new unlocked for each class's legendary and divine items, none of which I have unlocked yet. Then there's the reliquary, which is basically an archive of all the items you've unlocked thus far. The bestiary, on the other hand, is a very useful archive of all the enemies you fight that also presents strategies which show their weaknesses and abilities. Very useful, take advantage of it, especially on the harder difficulties. Lastly, you have the library, which contains a bunch of unlocks for information on bosses, your characters, different tales in the world, and levels you fight in, all unlocked using sentinel seals, which you get by winning runs. After that, that's it for the meta progression. As you can see, it's quite a bit. There's no shortage of content to dip into here, as it will take quite some time to unlock all this stuff, and that's just awesome. Much bang for your buck here. Again, good job, ArtDock. Oh, forgot one thing. Performance. There were absolutely zero issues that I had with performance. My entire time I didn't encounter a single bug, frame rate drops, hitching, nothing. Not a single problem with performance. Hope everyone else has the same experience. I also hope they decide to sell the soundtrack with the full release, as the music is a pleasure. ArtDock! Okay, enough praise, time for the necessary criticism section. So what do we have here? Not as much as most games, to be honest. And for starters, let me say that most of this will be a personal preference thing rather than objective criticism, as I think the devs built exactly what they were trying to here, and it shows. I just personally found some things frustrating, but many people might actually enjoy those aspects, so I'll just list my whiny little grievances here and you decide on if you agree or not. The main issue I have with Lootbound is the use of dice rolls in the event nodes. This can make runs either extremely difficult or extremely easy, and it all depends on your dicey rolls. If you fail a roll, you're shit out of luck and get no items, stat buffs, or gems. I hate this. The RNG here is infuriating. I have gone entire runs where I only succeeded in 2 dice rolls. That's out of like 22 to 24 possibilities or so, give or take, depending on the route you take each run. There will be times you roll a 1 on a 3 cost and then re-roll for another one, and you can only re-roll once per event, so you're just done. And sure, we humans are susceptible to negative emotions, so I probably remember the failures more than all the successes. I'm not saying it's unfair, but my point is it just doesn't feel good. You often walk away from these events with absolutely nothing except frustration. Just feels bad, man. At the very least, I wish they would have something like the 3 options of varying difficulty, but maybe also a 4th, weaker baseline reward that you would get regardless of failing or succeeding the dice roll. That way you're at least getting something from the event. As it is now, it just feels really shitty to lose these dice rolls over and over again. And speaking of RNG, it can get rough at times when fighting elites or bosses as well. The main problem with this aspect is that enemies can dodge and crit. I have lost entire runs simply due to the enemy getting a lucky dodge or crit at the perfect time, and runs can take up to an hour and a half, so it just feels wasted with all that unlucky RNG. Yeah. I've had elites dodge a killing blow just to get the last hit on my character and kill me, and when your character dies, the run ends, even if your companions are still alive. I've had my main character get one shot in the final boss with a crit, despite being built as a tank with full health and even buffed armor that exceeded his base armor. It was the Paladin, so he can increase his armor by a lot. Yet the boss just one-shot a couple thousand points of health and armor with a crit. 1.5 hour run gone. Just like that. Poof! Needless to say, I was livid in those moments, and I doubt that that was the experience the devs intended. Frankly, I don't think the enemy should be able to crit or dodge. It just feels too random, and given you can't see the enemy's stats, you don't even know what their possibilities are to crit or dodge, so there's no counter. So yeah, personally, I feel only the player and the companion should be able to crit and dodge, just... Alright, Derek. And this ties into another criticism I have, that of giving information to the player. This is one aspect Lootbound could work on a bit. There are several instances of you not being able to see information that you really should be able to see. The aforementioned enemy stats are one, but you also can't see your own ability tooltips in combat when it's not your turn. Likewise, while on the world map, you can't see your party's abilities either. You can only view them in combat when it's your turn. Very odd design choice, and the stat screen also doesn't update with any buffs you have in combat, which would be helpful. As it is now, you only see the buffs under the characters' avatars. The same goes for items in the reliquary. It only shows the names and pictures of the items, but not the actual stats. I guess that's not a huge deal, but it would be nice to have that info, nah mean? There's another similar issue in that when you're in the blacksmith, training, or chest nodes and picking items to roll dice on, you can't access your stats or inventory. So you're picking and choosing based on memory alone, and given the hefty amount of stats and items you have, it can make for a bad time, man. You also can't see the item shapes when choosing them in the chest node, so you often may pick something that you simply can't even fit into your inventory because the shape is off. Which brings me to another point, item shapes and aura requirements. This can be very frustrating. Some items in the latter half of the run will become these completely ridiculous shapes that, by that point, you simply cannot include it into your build as they simply do not fit in your inventory. You'd have to choose sacrificing 2 to 3 items just to get them to fit, and that almost always results in a stat loss. I mean, just look at this thing. What the fuck is this? How am I supposed to Tetris this into my build? It's mostly a problem with the most powerful items as well, which makes it all the more infuriating because by the last level of your run, you'll mostly be just throwing away items because you can't fit them into your inventory. Blech. Why, ArtDock? Why? On top of that, some items with auras will have parameters that are also frustrating, such as requiring the item to be on the right side or the bottom of the inventory in order for the auras to activate. This can be a huge pain in the ass as that is just another wrench thrown into the mix on top of all the other Tetris parameters you have to adhere to in order to get the aura buffs. Just feels completely unnecessarily excessive. That said, many may enjoy this added level of difficulty. I, for one, don't care for it, but you know, each to their own. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. One man's vomit mucus ball is another man's soup. That sort of thing. I'm fine with the auras only affecting certain items and even in certain areas around the aura item, but I don't think being forced to put them on certain sides of the inventory adds to the enjoyment of the player. I get kind of why some of them have it, as the aura may cover the entire length of the inventory, but I don't know, just another one of those things that feels bad, especially when you have to not use so many items because of it, as they simply will not fit in your inventory. Another criticism is that of the blacksmithing gems. You can't hold them in your inventory. Instead, you have to place them immediately into an item upon succeeding a dice roll. Why that is, I have no idea. But this will often find you never taking blacksmithing routes early on because it's a bit of a waste in that you can't remove the gem from the item, and you'll most likely be replacing those weaker early items later in the run anyways. Now, one final issue I have with Lootbound is that of mana. I didn't mention it earlier as I wanted to talk about it here, but I'm not sure if I like having mana in the game, or at least the way it's implemented. Most of your abilities cost mana. Each character has a mana pool. Some abilities cost only 2 or 3 mana, while others can cost up to 17 mana on some characters. And many of the items will have negative mana as a stat. Woo! This leads to a very frustrating aspect of you often running out of mana on many of your characters midway into the game. This then forces you to use camps and mana potions instead of opting for other, better, more fun options. Now, once you upgrade some characters with mana options in the barracks, it may be less of a problem, but the warrior class, for instance, doesn't have an option to upgrade his mana in the barracks, and you will find him running out of it all the time. Each character does get an ability that restores 5 mana, but it costs an entire turn to use, and 5 mana is pocket change, let's be honest. You will often find yourself stalling fights in order to spam your mana regen over and over before killing the last enemy. Just ugh, no bueno. I'm just not a fan of using mana overall here, but it does work. I just think it's more frustrating than fun to deal with. Maybe if they restored more of it after each combat, or at the very least fully restoring mana and health when moving between levels, because as it is now you don't restore any, it wouldn't be as much of a problem. But as it is now, it's just, again, doesn't feel good. Now, as you can see, some of these criticisms are more preference than anything, but my preference is for optimal fun with the least amount of frustration, and I think changing some of these aspects would push the game more into the fun side of things. Can't expect that now, as it would likely be too much work, but maybe some tweaks here and there? ArtDock? Okay, not that many criticisms if I do say so myself. For the most part, Lootbound is a joyous and sensual experience that has me coming back for more. This is definitely one of those just one more run type of deals, and I think a lot of you would really enjoy it. It's obviously inspired by some of the true greats of roguelites, but ArtDock instilled a great deal of innovation into this one and introduced new mechanics that I've never seen in the genre before. I applaud them and hope they continue to build new games with the same innovation and imagination. But tell me what you guys think. Have you tried the demo? It's been up for a bit now, so why not give it a shot? Do you agree with me when it comes to my criticisms, or am I just being picky? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to like the video, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching this far. This has been Jarek Defiler, foaming at the mouth due to BS dice rolls and that one tile that prevents me from Tetrising my item. ArtDock! You all have a good morning, afternoon, evening, or night, depending on where you are. And go demo and wishlist Lootbound. Breakdown.